Hey guys, Patrick here, and today I'm going to be talking about high intensity techniques and why I think a lot of people should really just stop doing them. Now, really quickly, what are high intensity techniques? High intensity techniques are things that you use in the gym to absolutely torch your muscles, all right? Just really rip them to shreds. One example of this can be forced reps, which is just where, you really just push as hard as you can and then you stop for a couple of seconds and then you push as hard as you can again. Just really, again, torch the muscle. Cheat reps, can be another example. Lifting a little bit of weight that is a bit too heavy for you, force it up a little bit, but then this is where a lot of people get cheat reps wrong, is like you really control the eccentric on the way down, like you cheat it up, but then it's really just to tear up the muscles on the eccentric. Drop sets are another example where, you do a bunch of reps, drop the weight, immediately get back on, do a bunch of sets, drop the weight, and then so on and so forth. Now, high intensity techniques aren't inherently a bad thing. However, I do think that they are literally something that should only be used once you've reached that advanced level of bodybuilding. This is why I think a lot of people should stop doing them, is because, it's when you're newer to bodybuilding at the beginner and intermediate levels, you basically respond to anything, right? It doesn't have to be high intensity. Anything will get you to grow. However, when you're lower down on that threshold, you also have a maximum capacity to what your body can do and achieve. All right. So, for instance, when you're a beginner, let's talk about this. A lot of people say that 10 to 20 sets per week is optimal for growing muscle. Not if you're a beginner. If you're a beginner, 10 sets is the maximum. Once you start going into that 15 to 20 set range weekly, you're actually going to completely torch your muscles, and it's just going to break down, and it's not going to be able to build back up in time or really as optimally as possible. And high intensity techniques fall into that same umbrella, except I would even categorize them as not even something intermediates should do, right? Because it's really, high intensity techniques are something that are mainly used by advanced lifters to draw out what they can, to draw out what very little is left on their maximum potential, right? And the reason why I bring this up is just because I see tons and tons and tons and tons of beginners try high intensity techniques. And the reason for that is because, that it's kind of like what happens is these people get into working out, they look at their favorite fitness influencer or bodybuilder, and they're like, well, I want to look like that guy, so I'm basically just going to copy what he does, and then, and then that'll help me to look like him. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, but what you're seeing is his training now, not what their training looked like, 5, 10, 15 years ago when they started, because when they started, they probably weren't exercising like this, and neither should you at the start, and that's something that these people got to keep in mind. Like, for instance, to give an example, when you look at a boxer who's been in the game for 20 years, and when he hits the pad, he doesn't go like really drive his fists through the pads or whatever. They tap and touch. They just, and the reason for that is because their body has already gone through the training of learning how to use these techniques properly. So this is more just kind of keeping that motor function in check. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the inverse of high-intensity techniques, because it's like, okay, they've trained intensely at the start and under pressure, so now they can use these techniques in a more lighter manner without having to, really rip through the pads. But, a beginner, if they're just, and I'm talking about somebody who wants to, fight professionally and not necessarily, you know what I'm saying, just do it for fitness or whatever. A beginner, if they just, tap pads like that, they don't have the experience or the knowledge to know what these movements are supposed to mean, or like how they are supposed to actually look and function under high stress and high intensity. Again, sort of like the bit of the opposite. Because now when you're a bodybuilder, you know, and you're in your later years, you have to use high intensity techniques to get what's left of yourself to grow, as opposed to in the beginning, anything can get it done. And so again, it's like what's happening is these people are seeing these advanced techniques, and they're like, well, I want to look like that, I want to train like that, and it's like, no, you'll just get wiped, you know what I mean? So it's just something to keep in mind, guys, is that when you're starting out, or even at that intermediate level, you don't need to go balls to the wall crazy in order to get results. All right, and that's just kind of what I wanted to get across today. So that's all I have to say. So I'm Patrick, and I'll see you next time.